I think one of the things that people might have noticed when we were promoting this episode was that it seemed ominous. The title of this episode is Visual Literacy, a Crisis of Methods. So the question is, given that, would you agree that there is a crisis in visual literacy? Siguro I'd go with Sir Francis first and then just
I think visual literacy, yes, there's a crisis on the skill of visual literacy, the need for, I think, not just students, but for the public to develop yung fluency in the language of photographs. And I think there's a crisis on the method because if we look at the local context within the Philippines, I think there are different approaches or different definitions of what visual literacy is. Therefore, we have different approaches how to achieve visual literacy. So if we compare it, let's say, to the United States, where they have an accepted working definition of what visual literacy is and ano yung competencies ng visual literacy, it is already, I think, implemented in their common core curriculum. So it's clearly defined to them what it is. I think locally in our context, um, I think it's people are just learning what visual literacy is, and I think wala pa ring working definition for us, or we don't have an agreed method how to achieve it.
So later Sir Francis meron ako mga follow-up questions doon pero siguro I'll turn over the floor to Jess muna.
Nung tinanong yung nilagay mo yung title, yung about visual literacy if it's a crisis of method. Actually, ang daming tanong na napunta sa isip ko eh. Ang dami kong naging tanong. I mean, is it really a crisis of method? I mean, do we really have, some level of visual literacy in the first place? Of course there is. Pero, I mean, kung titingnan mo sa states or any other, developed countries, they actually have a subject. They actually have a course on visual literacy as early as grade schoolers, middle schoolers. Pero sa Pilipinas wala eh. Parang especially nung 'di ba, nung nagkaroon ng changes sa education system, pumasok ng K-12, halos nawala na yung mga arts and humanities subjects. Well, meaning mostly nawala yung art studies. Pero kung yung sa ibang mga bansa, meron na sila actually na visual literacy as a subject. No, they really defined that it should be, it should be taught to children, to kids, especially yung elementary years, high school years. So ganun siya ka-importante. I just really don't know bakit dito sa Pilipinas wala. Yeah, well, instead na dine-develop siya, lalo siyang tinatanggal. As in relation to the newer education systems that we have. So yun, actually mas marami akong tanong ngayon eh.
The two of you highlighted visual literacy for the public, or at least in terms of the educational institution or educational system. Kasi one of the ideas also, as mentioned by Francis, is that there is a concern to which discourse, so at least to what domain are we trying to apply visual literacy. Sir Francis, no-mention mo na in the US, at saka si Jess nabanggit niya na in other countries, visual literacy is part of the educational system. So specifically, anong level? I mean, in a way, similar na yung system ng Philippines at saka abroad dahil nagkaroon na ng K-12, no? Pero visual literacy, at what part of the human development is it being taught?
Like sa US, like the common core curriculum. So it's the curriculum that they use for pre-K until grade 12. Yung visual literacy is an identified skill or competency na dapat ma-demonstrate ng student. Therefore, it's not only taught in one class actually, but it's actually integrated in other subjects that parang there's no relation to art. Minsan nasa mathematics class siya or nasa social science class siya. So yung skill that they have identified of what visual literacy is sometimes it's a skill that also is being asked to be demonstrated or to be part of another class beyond arts or beyond the visual arts na classes nila. So we could see na for them, the skill of visual literacy is important not just for those who are going into the field of photography or in the arts, but rather every single student needs to develop that skill kasi important siya with how, I think, how we are communicating today.
Siguro, if I can draw some conclusions from what you said, Sir Francis, no? Yung visual literacy, you've highlighted that it's not necessarily in the field of arts. It's something that you have to be a productive member of society. Diba? I mean,
Yes.
to highlight.
Oo.
Yeah.
So hindi lang siya parang need for an artist eh. Parang it's now a need of every single person. Kasi the way we have communicated or the way society has changed, parang nakita nila na it's a competency that everybody needs to develop. That's why in the United States, sa Common Core, it's for every single student. Hindi lang siya exclusively for art students. And it is developed and it is taught in all of the levels from pre-K to, I think, grade 12 or even until college level. Of course, yung level of discourse or the level of assignments or activities, nag-iiba siya depending also on the level of engagement dun sa student. But you could see na yung skills that na-define nila of what visual literacy is, ina-apply din nila to other subjects. Kasi I think part of it is they've also identified na may funding na nawawala sa arts. So certain art programs are being removed from the curriculum. So kung wala ka ng art classes, how do you still teach visual literacy outside of the art classes? So I think yun yung kailangan natin in our educational system. We also have to, since we're reviewing the K-12 curriculum, maybe we also need to review na, is visual literacy a competency that Filipinos need?